Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with a major problem facing the South African government: drug addiction. Addiction to drugs is a reality and becoming a bigger challenge every day. A new way of sharing illicit drug is making the situation even more complicated. From Johannesburg, reporter Thuso Khumalo looks at the work of those who have taken it upon themselves to fight drug abuse.
32-year-old Spusiso Vilakazi is a former drug addict living in Johannesburg. For the past 2 years, he has lived a clean life. He says he decided to quit doing drugs and pursue photography after seeing his life was falling apart. Now he's back to the streets, not for more drugs, but to persuade those still hooked to quit as well. He counsels them, buys them illegal food, and urges them to go to rehabilitation centers. When they are sick, he urges them to go to the clinic.
They know about the dangers. They know what the drugs are doing to them, but then some of them, they're like, there's no need for me to stop because I'll go back to reality, go back to my problems and stuff. So they think that by taking drugs, it's eliminating their problems.
His biggest worry is the latest method of taking these drugs, popularly known as Bluetooth. This is a method where an addict injects a drug into their bloodstream and other addicts draw out his blood and injects it into their own bloodstream. With nyaope, a concoction of dagga, heroin, antiretroviral drugs, red poison and acid being the most popular drugs amongst the youngsters, Vilakazi says he fears that if they survive the fatal effects of the drugs' ingredients, they are likely to contract HIV and other blood-transmitted diseases such as hepatitis. His message is slowly finding acceptance to his friends. Hooked by a friend into drugs, 23-year-old Sienna Naiton says he now spends each day searching for money to feed his addiction. He is grateful people like Vilakazi have encouraged him to find other means of making a living instead of stealing. And Naiton says the will to quit drugs is gradually overwhelming him.
It is a dream for me to change right now because my life is terrible because I can't do another things, I'm always running after my addictions.
He is already warning those not hooked never to try drugs, especially the youth.
Stay away from the drugs, don't try the drugs, and don't even wanna look at them.
Law enforcement officials in Johannesburg are also pursuing drug peddlers with the hope of stemming out the drug supply. Wayne Minnaar, spokesperson of the Johannesburg Metro Police Department, has ordered his corps to sweep the streets clean from drugs.
We want to get our city to be beautiful. All the bylaws must be obeyed.
Martin Zygmunt, a volunteer at a drug addicts rehabilitation center in Hillbrow, Johannesburg, says the war against drugs can still be won as long as those that are hooked are willing to change.
It sounds hard, but they really need to go really to the bottom until they realize that they need to change, and then they come, and then they're also willing to push through and get their life back.
And Vilakazi says one day he hopes to have his own rehab center that will be a life-saving home for all those who are now slaves of illicit drugs. Thuso Khumalo for VOA News, Johannesburg.
The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says China is set to invest $14.7 billion in the nation. President Ramaphosa made the comments on Tuesday after talks between the two countries. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited South Africa Tuesday and says the world's second-largest economy will take active measures to expand imports from South Africa to support developments in Africa's most industrialized economy. Xi says China and South Africa are important emerging economies with similar perspectives on many global issues. Ramaphosa has promised to revive the economy since becoming president in February. He says Xi has indicated that China is ready to invest and work with South Africa in various sectors. Democratic Republic of Congo's health ministry on Tuesday declared an end to an Ebola outbreak believed to have killed 33 people after 42 days with no new cases. An Ebola outbreak is normally declared over once 42 days have passed since blood samples from the last confirmed case test negative for the second time. The outbreak was first detected in northwest Congo in April. It was dealt with rapidly by the World Health Organization and Congolese authorities, including the deployment of an experimental vaccine given to over 3,300 people. That helped contain the impact of the virus, even when it reached the city of Mbandaka, with a population of 1.5 million, which has frequent air and river links to Congo's sprawling capital, Kinshasa. Now, for more on the good news from Congo, Dr. Ibrahim Sosifal, Emergency Response Director for the World Health Organization Africa Regional Office, joins me live via Skype from Brazzaville. Good evening, Dr. Fall.
Good evening, Vincent.
Now, please give us just a quick preview of what has led to this success, particularly in that region.
Thank you very much. Let me first of all congratulate the Democratic Republic of Congo for this rapid response. I think it was important for the country to be transparent and report as soon as possible, as soon as the outbreak was confirmed. So it allows WHO and partners to come on board from the first day to mount this massive response. So we were able to coordinate this massive response with a number of partners and to deploy experts from all over the place within a few days. So it was really important to ensure that all partners are working under the leadership of the government around one plan and to respond to the outbreak both in the urban center and in the most remote areas.
Yes. Now, was the vaccine the key to containing this recent outbreak? And what else can you associate with the success in the DRC's outbreaks in the past?
I think the vaccine was an important tool because for the first time we are using it for intervention. If you look at the 3,300 something people vaccinated, none of them developed Ebola, and they were all at high risk, meaning that the vaccine may have played an important role. We are still documenting. But in addition to the vaccine, we have used traditional action like contact tracing, active case searching, rapid isolation and treatment, and also making sure that people are not infected from the hospital by making sure that infection prevention and control is underway.
What are the main lessons that have been learned from this particular outbreak?
I think in terms of lesson learned, we need to highlight again the rapid declaration of the outbreak by the Congolese government in line with the international health regulation and allowing partners, WHO and other partners to come on board as soon as possible and to work together like one team in all areas affected. I think it was crucial to have everybody working together in a very well-coordinated manner.
Now, you said there was a quick, really rapid response. Do you see this being able to be replicated in other parts in case there is an outbreak of Ebola?
Yeah, this is important because we follow what happened after West Africa outbreak. WHO went through a deep reform for the work on emergencies. So now, meaning that you have mechanism to deploy onto people and to release funds to start rapid response when outbreak is declared. Had been done last year in Likati, but it was less complex. This one is more complex. But now we have a program which is really responsive, and we are working closely with countries to make sure that we can rapidly detect and respond to all types of outbreaks and emergencies.
So quickly, what do you say is the role of any government that finds itself in this situation?
I think the role of governments is extremely important because if the country doesn't declare early enough the emergency or the outbreak, it will be difficult for partners to come on board. And this is an obligation under the international health regulation. So once again, we really want to congratulate the Congolese government and hope that all countries will do the same when they have any specific health problems.
Now, you said that, of course, they did the last test twice and verified after 42 days. Are there possibilities of people who probably went and died somewhere far and nobody knows why they died? And perhaps it was Ebola?
We had teams in all the hotspots and going to the most remote villages for active surveillance and active case finding. So we believe that this outbreak is over. Doesn't mean that the risk of Ebola doesn't exist anymore in Congo. We know that because of the ecology, the environment, the risk is still there. But it's important to continue to work with the country to reinforce the capacity for surveillance and rapid detection for any new outbreak.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fall.
Thank you.
Dr. Ibrahim Social Fall is the Emergency Response Director, World Health Organization's Africa Regional Office. Now, Kenya's largest slum awakened on Monday to the sounds of cranes and bulldozers demolishing hundreds of shanties to make way for road, leaving desperate residents homeless. Dwellers of the slum have filed 2 legal challenges to the planned demolition of their homes since construction began 2 years ago. But a judge ruled last year that the road was in the public interest and threw out the challenges. Kibera lies on the outskirts of Nairobi. It is one of Africa's largest slums and home to more than 400,000 people. The new road is supposed to ease congestion in the capital. Construction started in 2016 and there have been earlier demolitions, but residents say the latest move had taken them by surprise as authorities had promised compensation and advance notice of any forced evictions.
We were born here, and all along, we knew this was our land. But Kibera has no title deeds, and the government, well, they will always do what they want.
Would condemn this action. I think 30,000 households, businesses, schools, clinics, community centers, youth centers, all of this has gone down in the space of maybe 5 or 6 hours. The other concern that we've had is that there was an agreement that was reached between the Kenyan Urban Roads Authority, the Kenyan National Commission for Human Rights, and also the National Land Commission with community leaders that they would go through a process of developing a resettlement action plan, and that is not what has happened. Barely had we started the process of enumerating who was in this space. The bulldozers have arrived, and under armed guard, we've seen the destruction of tens of thousands of properties in this space.
Well, Kibera resident Mafisa Burhani and Executive Director Amnesty International Kenya, Irungu Houghton. Now, the government has demolished numerous luxury homes and a gigantic supermarket in recent efforts to decongest Nairobi by expanding major roads. Now, going to the west of the continent, political news, 15 Nigerian senators quit the ruling All Progressive Congress party on Tuesday, making it a minority in Parliament's upper house and indicating widening rift in President Muhammadu Buhari's political camp only months ahead of an election. 14 of the 15 lawmakers went to the opposition People's Democratic Party. That's according to a letter read on the Senate floor. The PDP, which was in power from the start of civilian rule in 1999 until Buhari took office in 2015, said in a tweet that 32 lawmakers in the lower house of Parliament, the House of Representatives, had also defected from the APC. The defections may make it harder for Buhari to push through his legislative agenda for the remainder of his first term, and follows the disclosure by a faction of Buhari's ruling APC party this month that it no longer backs his government. The United Nations Human Rights Office says voter intimidation, threats of violence and coercion, including people forced to attend political rallies, are being increasingly reported ahead of Zimbabwe's elections on July the 30th, especially in the rural areas. The election will be the first since former leader Robert Mugabe was removed in a de facto coup in November, and investors are watching closely in the hope it will spark an economic revival. The UN says there has also been the worrying use of disparaging language against female political candidates. A recent poll conducted by Afrobarometer indicated that Zimbabwe's July 30th presidential election will provide no clear winner. 40% of voters polled chose President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and 37 selected his opponent, Nelson Chamisa. Safe and reliable airline transportation is a key infrastructure need for Africa's growing economies. Tonight, we are focusing on the need to open up Africa's skies. Heidi Adams-Fitzpatrick and Karina Chaudhary take us inside one airline's plan to change the face of African aviation.
It used to be that when you check the flight boards at major U.S. international airports, most of the flights going to and from Africa weren't on African Airlines. Well, that's changing. And we're here at Dulles International Airport in the U.S. capital to find out more about the shift in the business of air travel. Every day, 78 international flights depart and land at this airport. Only 2 will take you directly to Africa on an African airline. That's why the ticket counter at Ethiopian Airlines is bustling. Passengers check in for a 13-hour non-stop to Addis Ababa. You next, Chicago.
Final destination today is Johannesburg, and chose Ethiopian Airlines because it was very reasonable, and also the service has been absolutely fantastic when we've flown it previously.
I've been using Ethiopian Airways to other destinations like to Nigeria, South Sudan, Rwanda. I've also used Ethiopian Airways on international flights. My family is based in Washington, D.C., so Addis Ababa has become another home.
Ethiopian is one of 7 African airlines cleared for direct flights to the United States. The East African carrier connects passengers in 4 major U.S. cities to 55 destinations in Africa. Nigusu Worku runs the airline's U.S. operations.
Air comes to 320 passengers, and we are finalizing for boarding. Let's go in and see.
On board a 777, he explains Ethiopian's expansion plans.
We have Vision 2025 to be a leading aviation group in Africa and connect Africa to the rest of the world. We have invested a lot in our fleet. Currently, we are proud to operate young fleet in the whole world. Our average fleet age is 5 years, whereas the industry age is like 9 years. So we are operating younger fleet than the rest of the world, which helps us a lot to enhance safety of our operations.
In the past 10 years, Ethiopian Airlines has quadrupled its passenger count to nearly 10 million. Right now, it is Africa's fastest growing and most profitable airline, outpacing South African Airways and regional rival Kenyan Airways, both of whom have been struggling financially. Still, South African rules the routes from Washington to West Africa. Kenyan Airways was recently cleared for direct flights between Nairobi and New York. That must make for a very tough, competitive landscape. What is Ethiopian Airlines doing differently to win that game?
Competition makes you work hard, smarter. So it's good to have competition. That way we can enhance our efficiency, we can enhance our productivity. So that is the only sure way to survive in this 21st century. So we welcome many airlines to fly into the U.S. from Africa.
The airline business is changing inside Africa too. These flights are not just flying across the Atlantic, they're flying north, south, east, west across Africa. Earlier this year, 23 African countries launched a single aviation market to improve connectivity on the continent, reduce airfares, and boost economic growth, clearing the way for African carriers to challenge global aviation giants for dominance at home, and ending the days when the easiest or safest way to travel inside Africa was via Europe or the Middle East. This flight is about to take off. Ethiopian Airlines says the African sky is not the limit. They hope to show the world what the future of African aviation can look like. Heidi Adams Fitzpatrick, VOA News, Washington.
fascinating. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Okorin. I'm still ahead on Africa 54. Pakistani engineers unveil a smart wheelchair. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
Un message d'amitié au peuple libyen.
And a group of Pakistani engineering students have developed a voice-operated wheelchair to help the disabled achieve more self-reliance. The chair is getting some traction, as we see in this report from Saman Khan in Lahore, narrated by Birzan Hamdad.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, and this couldn't have been more true for Faiz Arbab.
When my grandmother fell in the bathroom and injured herself, I thought of how helpless she was and that she had to depend on others. So I thought to myself, what if there is a wheelchair that can make her independent?
Arbab is an engineering student at Lahore University of Management Sciences. He presented his idea to the National Incubation Center and then set about making it happen with the help of his team. They built a wheelchair named Gobi that understands voice commands.
Left. Wapas jao.
This is the first voice-operated wheelchair in the world. This is the smart wheelchair. It has a range of 100 feet.
A patient in bed needs someone to bring the wheelchair to them, even if the wheelchair is an electric one. This eliminates being dependent on anyone.
Gobi currently costs around $800, but Arbab is hoping the cost will go down.
Slowly but surely, we are hoping that the price will drop once we start mass producing.
Gobi comes with an app and can also be operated using a smartphone. The state-of-the-art wheelchair was launched in the market in June, and other companies have already showed interest in its technology.
We are also receiving phone calls from China and Japan to sell this technology. We are hoping to get assistance and support from our government to help us get these wheelchairs to our customers.
Faiz Arbab says this project will not end with this wheelchair. Next, he'll turn his attention to making his entire country disabled friendly. For Saman Khan in Lahore, Pakistan, this is Birzan Hamdad, VOA News.
U.S. President Donald Trump continues to defend his recent summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump says that he gave up nothing to Putin in the meeting last week, but the president's performance received a negative review in the latest Washington Post-ABC News poll, which found that 50% of Americans disapproved of Trump's handling of the summit, compared to 33% who approved. Here's VOA's Jim Malone.
It may become a moment frozen in time. President Trump is asked about Russian meddling in the 2016 election, with President Putin beside him.
My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia.
Trump again defended the summit on Twitter Monday after a week of criticism from Democrats like Nancy Pelosi.
President Trump obviously seemed frightened in the presence of Putin. What was he afraid of? What is Putin blackmailing President Trump with?
And even fellow Republicans like Jeff Flake.
We have indulged myths and fabrications, pretended that it wasn't so bad, and our indulgence got us the capitulation in Helsinki.
The controversy captured in this Time magazine cover that shows a Trump-Putin mind meld. All this pushback on Trump's performance eventually prompted a stronger statement from the president on Russian meddling.
We will stop it. We will repel it. Any efforts to interfere in our elections.
Ordinary Americans were quick to weigh in.
Putin's almost like an evil genius in a way. Like he's very manipulative and he knows what he's doing. And I think Trump really got played.
I think it all boils down to point blank sore loser, and they're just grasping at straws.
Trump may have hurt himself politically, says analyst Elaine Kmark.
I think it's lasting political damage, but more importantly, it's lasting damage to his presidency. It raises very, very serious questions about either his competence or his integrity. And neither one is something you want to question in a president.
But will it shake Trump's loyal base? John Fortier is skeptical.
The average Republican voter is with Donald Trump. The elite of the Republican Party is very split on him, but the average Republican voter believes in him.
The Trump-Putin summit now added to a long list of issues for voters to sift through before midterm congressional elections in November. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. In Lagos, Nigeria, the business of second-hand donated clothes is booming. Once patched up by local tailors, this pre-worn outfit will help dress a nation of more than 160 million people. Nigeria once had a thriving textile industry, largely based in the northern city of Kano. But in recent decades, as Nigeria became more dependent on oil money and its state-run electricity company went to pieces, the industry fell apart. Next up, a Kenyan engineer has developed a low-cost option to protect local people and property from the dangers posed by lightning. Lightning arresters are placed on the roof of a building to protect internal wires from damage and protect the building's inhabitants and people nearby. Engineer Mesha Kabul has developed a lightning arrestor using aluminum rather than expensive copper. The new Comley lightning arrestor costs from $150 including installation, while the conventional copper one costs $250. Well, and finally, a robotic arm that combines magnetic resonance imaging and ultrasound scanning could speed up the diagnosis of breast cancer and muscle diseases. Now, the device is designed to use MRI to identify tumors. The ultrasound probe locates the tumor in real time and enables the biopsy needle to be aligned with the tumor. The researchers say this innovative technique constructs a virtual 3D model of the area of the body under investigation, which means that small tumors not visible to conventional ultrasound imaging techniques could be targeted. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This expression sounds like a violent way of eating, but it's actually not always about eating.
Here is your Russian book, Anna. Thanks for letting me borrow it.
Oh, are you done with level 1 already?
Yeah, I finished last week, and I've already finished level 2.
Wow, you are really sinking your teeth into learning Russian.
Well,